welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I am reviewing The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is book 1 in the Daevabad Trilogy. This review will be spoiler-free. Now, the first thing I want to say is that I was immediately reminded of the 1001 Nights, which is a wonderful thing. A major reason for me wanting to pick up this book, frankly, was the setting. And I was delighted with what S.A. Chakraborty did. She obviously is very well read, has done her homework, and has created a loving tribute to the world of the 1001 Nights, which of course spans much of northern Africa and the Middle East, all the way over to India, even up to Tibet. And so this is also the world of the book in some ways. It is, at least it begins in 18th century Egypt, but quickly it departs for the magical world of the jinn, which exists alongside the human world, unbeknownst to most humans. And as I said before, it spans this vast territory from the Sahara to Tibet, and the 6 tribes of the jinn have borrowed from the human cultures that they dwell near, which gives cultural differences to the various tribes of the jinn as well, and also gives a rich tapestry for the story's backdrop. And that is something that I enjoyed very much. I enjoyed immensely. There's a richness to this story that I found very compelling and interesting. And I enjoyed it very much, and I think it was handled very well, very respectfully by S.A. Chakraborty. So much appreciated, and that was definitely a win for me. The setting delivered everything that I had hoped that it would. So absolute thumbs up there. Also, along with the setting comes the politics of the book. And this, I believe, was also very well done. There's a complexity here, and it probably helps a little bit and I won't get into spoilers, but there are various factions. You can imagine there are these 6 tribes of the jinn, and they have their rivalries. They have their history. And so that is going on. But there is another layer of politics between the jinn and the Shafit. And the Shafit are the offspring of jinn and humans. And the Shafit are second-class citizens, if you will, of this magical world. And there are various reasons for that, which I can't really get into without spoilers, but it makes for another layer of politics here in the book. And more entities that are vying for power. You have the Ifrit, who are the relatives, but also ancient enemies of the jinn. They diverged long before the present of the story, and that is something that is revealed in the course of the story. So I won't get into that, but the Ifrit are the baddies here, at least in this book. And finally, there are other magical creatures as well, like the Marid and the Peri. And by the way, apologies if I'm mispronouncing any of these things. I am doing my best with the pronunciations. But yeah, there's an array of magical creatures in this magical world, yet again enriching the story and making it, for me, a very interesting read. And I love the various relations between these creatures, and there's a little bit of a chaotic element there as well, because they are these various allegiances and alliances, but various characters have their own mind and don't necessarily adhere to the expected allegiances. So that made the story very interesting as well. At the heart of it as well is this magic, which is basically elemental. It's an elemental type of magic that you have in the City of Brass. And meaning that the various magical species are grounded in one of the elements. So the jinn are associated with fire, for example, the Marid with water, the Peri with air, etc., etc. And humans are associated with earth, so that's an interesting element in there as well. But I won't get too much into that, except to say that I enjoyed the way that S.A. Chakraborty incorporated the magic into the story. It was not overly explained at all. I would call it definitely a soft magical system, if we want to label it that way. But it was an interesting part of the story. It served the story well, in other words, which I thought was great. And it was most definitely based in the cultural mix that has appeared in the book as well. So there are lots of various nods. I'm sure that I missed a ton of them, not being nearly as well versed in this part of the world as S.A. Chakraborty obviously is. But I could tell there were lots of interesting references to various tales, and I immediately thought of the 1001 Nights, but I'm sure there are others that she's much more aware of than I am. But I enjoyed the nods that I saw, and the way the magic works in there. The gene do not resemble the ridiculous image that I put on the thumbnail in any way whatsoever. They're much more compelling and interesting than the stereotype that I included on the thumbnail. So so I thought that was really, really well done. And another thing that I enjoyed a lot was the characters. There are two main perspective characters, and these are Nari and Ali, and they are both very rich, well-sketched characters. They are full of conflicts, each of them in their own way, and that makes them very compelling and interesting. I enjoyed each of them, and I found myself rooting for them, which was a bit problematic because it put me in this dilemma at times because they're not always necessarily on the same side. And each provides a very different viewpoint at various stages in the story. That is something that worked really well in relation to the world building, because whereas one of the characters is an insider in the world, the magical world of the gene, the other is most definitely not. And so we see that world through the eyes of the insider, but we also see it through the eyes of the newcomer, the outsider. And that worked really, really well, I thought, because it was like you get a view of a city from one perspective, and then suddenly it's a very different place from that other perspective. And that is something that I enjoyed a lot. And perspective is an important part of this book. I think that that's something that's woven into the tale really well in a way that I found enriching. Absolutely great in almost every respect, really. And I also felt like I enjoyed seeing this world as a reader through the eyes of the more innocent character, the more naive character, because I also am innocent and naive and getting to know this world. So I appreciated that I found the wonder of it in that way. So other supporting characters were fantastic as well, particularly Dara. You can't talk about this book without talking about Dara. Certainly, to me, the most outstanding of the non-perspective characters. And I think it was a very wise move on the part of S.A. Chakraborty not to make Dara as interesting as he is. I think it was a very wise move not to make Dara a perspective character because of Dara's status, position. I can't say a lot because I don't want to give away spoilers here, but because of Dara's history, let's say. It was a very wise move not to make Dara a perspective character because you think that a character with such a storied history would have a very different way of thinking. And so it's better to see that character from the outside and from the conflicting points of view of the two perspective characters. So really good stuff. And both narratives are, even though they conflict, very compelling. So that's a great part of this as well. So there are other strong supporting characters in there. I could list them, but they're all very well done, I thought. I was invested in the characters. I really mostly enjoyed the plot as well. There was a touch of stretching the narrative, particularly near the end. Just a little bit rushed, I thought, perhaps. There were some things that I needed to be explained, I think, in a way that made a little more sense at the end, but it was exciting. You know, the ending was very exciting and fun, and there were certain big moments that clearly Chakraborty was working toward. It's just that I think that some of the getting there could have been a little more explained or perhaps set up a little bit better. But that's a minor quibble, really. It was a very solid plot, very well paced. I enjoyed pretty much every aspect of this book. And I intend to follow up eventually by reading the second and third book in this trilogy. So yeah, big thumbs up from me. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I'm impressed. I believe this was a debut book for S.A. Chakraborty, which makes me even more impressed, frankly. I think that this is a writer that I'm certainly going to be paying attention to in the future. So yeah, I recommend giving it a try, especially if you're interested in a fantasy setting that takes inspiration from that part of the world and has some compelling characters. It has a lot of promise to it as well. So yeah, give it a shot, and that's it from me for now. Until next time.